Welcome in to the Inquirer podcast. It is Jeremy Werner and Joey Wagner at Memorial Stadium, where we just saw Illinois football defeat Michigan State 38-16. A big-time fourth quarter for that Illinois offense as they outscore the Spartans 14-0. The defense steps up late, but Luke Altmaier bounces back, 231 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Pat Bryant in his final game at Memorial Stadium has his best game. 4 catches, 135 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 catches of 30-plus yards, including a 57-yard touchdown catch. Oh, Josh McCray, 3 touchdowns. Gabe Akis and Seth Coleman combined for 3.5 of the Illini's 5 sacks. Joey, Illinois, at the end of the day, has a 3-possession win, a 3-score win over another Big Ten team, and they improve to 7-3. We'll talk about the bounce back for the offense. We'll talk about the defense getting home in an interesting third down package and some great special teams today. It was just good complementary football. And even though Illinois made it interesting in that third quarter, they dominated this game for the most part.
Yeah, it felt like throughout most of the game, it felt like it was a 2-possession game, a 14, 17-point game. Illinois definitely got that box score win in the fourth quarter with a couple late touchdowns to be on the right side of a box score win instead of what we've seen at times in the past. But you're right, man. It was complimentary football the way that, for the most part, the offense moved the ball, I thought, outside of that third quarter. Third quarter was bad, but I thought for the most part the offense moved the ball at a decent level. The defense had moments where you're like, ooh, what's going on there? But that's college football, right? There are going to be moments. But special teams, shout out to special teams, because the last time Michigan State and Illinois played, the special teams got a much different call out for that. But yeah, they kind of hit on all phases at key times. I think that's really the thing that when we talk about this, we need to mention that it wasn't consistently, but it was at the right times that they came up when they needed to.
Yeah, we are live on our YouTube channel, so send in those super chats. We'll get to those coming up here shortly as Joey and I break down this game. But I thought, Joey, we can zoom out here a little bit. Mm-hmm. I just thought this was such a needed win for not only the Illinois team, but for this fan base. Because
so much more for the fans. So much more.
It felt like, with back-to-back losses, 1 being the number 1 team in the country, and 2 being to a good Minnesota team, right? Like you finally lost a toss-up game where your quarterback didn't play all that well, that all of a sudden people thought this wasn't a good team. Well, you're 4-3. You're 7-3 overall, 4-3 in the Big Ten. This is just the 4th winning regular season for Illinois football since 2000. Like, put that in perspective. And 2 of the last 3 have come, 2 of the last 3 years that's happened under Brett Bielema. So 2 of those 4, the last 3 years. Like, this is a good season already, and you still have a chance to add 2 more to this, Joey, and go to one of the best bowl games that the Big Ten has. But you get that because today happened, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought you controlled the game for the most part. Kudos to the defense for stepping up when the offense really, took a step down there in the third quarter and gave Illinois' offense a chance to kind of, seal this one in the fourth quarter. But this is kind of what the team has looked like for most of the year. Not perfect, but against a worse team, Illinois took care of business. They've been doing that for most of this year. So I just think this is kind of what they've been. They have 2 losses to top 5 teams, and they have 1 to a Minnesota team that I think is very similar to them, and they didn't play well. But in all these other games, they found a way to win. The Purdue game obviously was not a great feeling win, but don't take these for granted. Like, this is a huge win for this program. The bounce back to have 52,000 in the stands for what was a great home season. Illinois goes 6-1. The first year they have 6 wins at home since 2001. Kudos to Brett Bielema in this program for being able to bounce back and, having a win that sets you up to where 2022 might not happen again. That maybe you actually can take advantage of the 6-1 start and end with 8 or 9 wins here.
Yeah, that's like, we were talking about this on the pregame show. I don't know that like you needed this win so your locker room didn't do the whole, oh, here we go again. Because I feel like Brett Bielema and this coaching staff had them to a point where they wouldn't feel like that. But the 52,000 people here, like as you mentioned, they've only had 4 of these since 2000, 4 winning seasons. So of course they would feel like, oh, here we go again, because it's gone again over and over and over. So I just think that getting this win, showing that, hey, this isn't a team that just loses every November, on top of the fact that across Kirby some interesting things are happening right now. Like you've kept that interest, you've kept that going. A really good bowl game, Jeremy. Citrus Bowl is still very much on the table, if not likely, at this point if Illinois would have won its next two.
Yeah, can we talk about that? Like the Citrus
Yeah.
Bowl has been here 4 games, I believe, and that doesn't mean Illinois is definitely getting in, but the Big Ten has 4 teams that are probably going to the playoff. Right? I think even if Indiana loses, one game, obviously to Ohio State, I think they're going to be in. I think those other teams are going to be in. So you get 4 teams there, and then who's the next best team? If Illinois wins just one more game, I think they're going to be in line for that. Because Iowa went to the Citrus Bowl 2 out of the last 3 years, so they usually like to change it up a little bit. And the other 2 teams you're going up against for that would be Minnesota, who just lost, who has a top 5 team left on the schedule after this bye week, and then they play Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's the other team that could potentially be in there, Joey, and they play each other, and they have a top 5 team, Oregon, left on the schedule. So if Illinois gets one more, I feel pretty good about them going to the Citrus Bowl December 31st in Orlando, which is a big bowl game for this program. But at worst, even if you win 2 more, I think there's no doubt you're going there. So, I mean, you get a 9-win season, which is on the table now. Like, what a season that would be for Brett Bielema and his program.
It'd be a huge season. And again, like we've talked about before, now you're going in the portal and you've not lost 3 or 4 in the month of November. If you were to take care of what you need, and now you've got more to say, hey, we've got 1 playing time. Obviously, we know their NIL money is up. And hey, this program is on the rise.
Now you're going to your donors and being like, yeah, this is fun, isn't it? It's fun. It's fun to win games. Let's go get more players and win more games. And the other thing, I saw somebody high up in the DIA after this game. It's like, you had 52,000 here on a cold November day. Like, we've seen this place in the last home game, and it's 20,000 maybe coming through the turnstiles. These were fantastic home crowds, and this is a fan base that wants to buy in. So I think this win, and if you can get a couple more, that's going to help all of that out.
That's 100%. Like, this fan base wants to buy in, but there are a lot of scars that have to callous over, and I like it takes
Bingo.
time. It does. Like, it takes time, and I know for some people they'll buy in tomorrow. Want to know that someone's buying in, but it takes people more time, and I get it. I get if you're someone who buys in early, you might get frustrated, but there's a lot that you've got to kind of rebuild. There's a lot of trust that needs to be rebuilt. And Brett Bielema is doing a heck of a good job of rebuilding that trust and telling people it'll be okay. I guess there's a path forward here. I'm not even trying to be I don't want to minimize it because I hate to say this, and this isn't me. I usually take shots at you. This isn't it, but do you jump in on the Bears or the White Sox at the very first sign? It takes time because you've seen some stuff. I get it. And so that's why I'm saying you have 2 of the last 3. You have a chance for a 9-win regular season. You're starting to get those calluses. You're starting to build that through. And you've seen people show up because they want to buy into this football team.
Yeah, it's kind of a reminder, too, that this team has some good players. And, boy, they bounced back. Luke Altmaier, I thought this was a good matchup for him against a Michigan State team that did not get after the quarterback. Kudos to the offensive line. I thought there were some ups and downs, and we'll get into that, Joey. But 0 sacks. I'm going to take that any time. Michigan State only has 1 sack, by the way, in 7 Big Ten games. That's insane. But Luke Altmaier was kept protected for most of the game, and he hit some deep shots. Some of the big throws to Pat Bryant, one under pressure, took a big shot on it. Then that 3rd down, just poised in the pocket, buying time, and hits Pat Bryant for a huge 3rd down when it really felt like Illinois really needed it, Joey. But great bounce back performance from him. Like we were saying, it felt like this team could have lacked confidence. Its quarterback didn't lack confidence after a couple bad weeks, right? And that's different, I think, for Luke Altmaier this year. But Pat Bryant is a star. I think he should be a top 100 NFL draft pick to end his career at Memorial Stadium with his best performance. Zachary Franklin was really good in those short routes, 7 catches, 44 yards. So that passing game bouncing back. I thought this matchup you could do it, but Joey, they took advantage of it. Michigan State had some of their starters out in the secondary, and Luke Altmaier and Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin took advantage of it.
Yeah, 19 of 32. It feels like a good amount of those incompletions came in that 3rd quarter stretch.
And they felt like good incompletions, to be honest with you, because
he threw it away. He threw it away.
Yeah.
That's a lot of growth, I think, for him to not try to feel the pressure of, it's still an 8-point game at that point in time. And he could have felt the pressure of, oh, God, that November, right? And all of a sudden you think you got to do something. Thought he threw it away and just made smart decisions with the football. But, yeah, you're right. There's 2 Pat Bryant plays that stick out. That double move to get that wide open 57-yard touchdown. Yeah, the safety probably could have been a little bit closer to Pat Bryant on that play, but he said they repped that in practice. They've been kind of waiting to unfurl that play in the course of a game, and he saw where the safety was, and he said if Luke had enough time, I knew I could get open, and he did. And no, he wasn't taking a shot at the line, but it's kind of a longer route to develop, right? You got to fake it and make that double move. And then for Pat Bryant to just come right over the middle, found a good spot in the zone. Luke Altmaier didn't freak out in the pocket. That wasn't the cleanest pocket he's ever had. It wasn't terribly messy, but there's times you feel like you've seen that situation where he tries to scramble or get out of there and do something. He stood in there and waited for his wide receiver to come open. It was a really critical point, Jeremy, in the game to get a first down. I think that was a scoring drive. It was a Josh McCray 1-yard touchdown where he jumped over the whole team to get in the end zone. Those two plays stick out. Those were really, really big plays.
Yeah, and Josh McCray, kudos to him. He's a closer, man. I really thought he could have had more touches again today. 9 carries, 61 yards, 3 touchdowns. It's good to see him, making an impact. Because early on in the season, Joe, I really didn't see it. But they needed him to step up with Caden Fagan out. I think he's got 7 touchdowns over the last 5 games. So he has been that short yardage guy that if the offensive line just gets a little bit of a push, he's going to make the most of it. Aiden Lawfrey had a couple good runs, especially that one towards the goal line where
to get to the
offensive line had great push. I thought Josh McCray was fantastic on that one. Cole Valentine got some play too, but the offensive line, we can hit on that. I thought there was some good. Like I thought the first half they were pretty good. Third quarter was terrible. I also thought the play calling by Barry Lunny in the third quarter was questionable, to say the least, because you had 3 straight passes, 3 and out, 3 straight runs, 3 and out when you weren't running the ball. Were you just getting blown off the ball in that third quarter? Because even though Michigan State's not, the most athletic and getting to the quarterback, they are stout. So I just thought that was weird. And it really could have hurt Illinois, but kudos to the defense for stepping up. But I thought the offensive line ended the game pretty well. I thought they protected Luke Altmaier and allowed them to have those 2 touchdown drives. So I would expect the offensive line to play better because this Michigan State defensive front is not very good getting after quarterback.
No, I think the play that I really was scratching my head is like a quarterback sweep on 3rd and 5. I didn't really understand that, but
especially the way Altmaier was playing, right? Especially on those third downs. Illinois was 8 for 15 on third downs today. Let your quarterback make a throw.
100%. And the 1 3 straight passes, Tanner Arkin drops it, so gets him off base a little bit on first down. And then it looked like Michigan State. Luke Altmaier said Michigan State had the most exotic pressures that they had seen to this point. And I'm wondering if teams are kind of looking at this and wondering, like we have, how well they're communicating up front, this Illinois line, seeing if you can, we've talked about it before, if you can run more stunts, if you can try to game some of these linemen and maybe get out of, if you're a team that doesn't do that, maybe try that and get that in the bag a little bit. So I'm really curious. I just don't know. The low moments for this offensive line feel lower than the high moments do. I don't know if that makes sense, but man, there are a couple.
It's just not. It's not it's been a weakness of the program for the last 2 years, right? For the most part. I did think today, at the end of the day, I thought there was probably a little bit more good than bad, but but the good news is, Joey, you're going up against Michigan State, Rutgers, who's really banged up, and Northwestern. I think those are 3 games that you shouldn't have a huge problem on the offensive line, but we'll see.
Yeah. I also want to bring up, while we're talking about the offensive line, that first drive, there was that 13-play drive, Jeremy, that they scored a touchdown on, the first touchdown. One, Josh McCray getting outside, he bounced it out and ran in. That reminded me, remember when Caden Fagan scored his first touchdown last season and he got outside and there's more wheels than maybe would meet the eye test? That reminded me, like, hey, Josh McCray's not just a guy who's strength. He's got a little bit of get up to him to get on the outside. But Illinois also overcame 2 out of 3 plays being false starts. And I thought that their first drive, no, it was not. It was their 3rd drive of the game. I thought that was really big because you've seen, it's not just Illinois, any team that gets a 5-yard penalty or use 10 penalty yards, like that typically has a punt coming. And I thought for Illinois to get through that, obviously on the backs of Luke Altmaier had a big throw to Alex Kapka-Jones down the right sideline or left sideline. I thought that was huge, man, to be able to overcome that and get through it.
I do want to say this, though. Like, if I'm grading the offensive line today, I think it's in the B range. You average 4.5 yards per carry, no sacks, and you scored 5 times in the red zone. And I thought you were physical in the red zone. So I'll take it. It's probably grading on a little bit of a curve, but I'll take that from the offensive line. All right,
not their worst game we've seen, right? Not anywhere really close. I thought they had some good moments. And to your point, you mentioned it. Josh Kreutz moving the line, moving Aiden Lawfrey 2 or 3 extra yards. Like they got some good push at times. I'm just concerned about when teams dial up some pressure and try to get exotic on them up front.
I feel pretty good about the center and tackles. I feel pretty good about them.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
All right, defensive front, got to give them a lot of credit. And I thought Aaron Henry, man, made a big change. Michigan State is not a good third down team. They don't run the football very well, but Illinois did hold their running backs, I think, 46 yards on 14 carries, 45 yards on 14 carries, which is about 3 yards per carry. So that was really good by them. Aiden Chiles is a really good player. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback in the Big Ten. So I wasn't surprised that he had some throwing success and was able to get some yards on the ground. But Gabe has played like a star, man. A sack and a half, 3 quarterback hurries. He was so close to having like a 3 or 4 sack day. Seth Coleman has 2 sacks. That's what you need. You need those guys to perform that well against a bad Michigan State defensive line. But got to give credit to Aaron Henry and his defensive staff, Joey, for finally putting in this third down package, whether you want to call it a NASCAR package or Joey's calling it a turbo package. Kanena Odeluga said they don't have like a name for it. I think it's just their dime or whatever. But you saw Kanena Odeluga on the field. You saw JoJo Hayden on the field as speed rushers, Gentle Hunt at defensive tackle. And then you brought on some different defensive backs like Jaheim Clark and Tyson Rooks. But they were more aggressive getting after the quarterback. You saw Matthew Bailey blitz sometimes. You just got some speed guys on the field that could finish some of those plays, Joey. And to do it against Aiden Chiles, who can really move, that was a great little wrinkle. We knew it was coming. We could tell it was coming, Joey, with how they were talking. But it worked. It worked really well as Michigan State goes 2 for 15 on third down today. That was the story of the game. Michigan State 2 for 15 on third down and Illinois 8 for 15. The only reason Michigan State was in this game because I think they converted their first 4 fourth downs, including 2 on that second touchdown drive. So I thought the defense making that little adjustment was huge.
I love that third down package. They don't have a name for it. We will take. See, we'll put in our suggestions for what we should call it. But, man, it was on Monday, Aaron Henry, you and I asked him about third down. And the whole time he talked, I just kept thinking, this feels like Kanena Odeluga. Yeah. So he walked off the podium, and I said, you could just tell us Kanena Odeluga is going to be the guy. And he kind of smiled and obviously was not going to share that with us. But Kanena Odeluga, please, after this podcast, go watch his interview. One, he's just a really fun guy to talk with and get to know. But he painted, and I guess I never really thought of it when you're talking about that third down package. It's kind of a
island of misfit toys. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, misfits feels harsh, but it feels right. Like it's him. He's coming off this ankle injury. Gentle Hunt hasn't played after transferring from Florida A&M, and obviously he's got a redshirt year. He'll be back next year. Malachi Hood was out there. He had an Achilles injury.
JoJo Hayden was playing linebacker.
JoJo Hayden was linebacker. Tyson Rooks was a wide receiver for literally earlier this year. Like, it's just kind of, they found a way to piece these guys together who maybe don't fit perfectly. Maybe Kanena Odeluga is not your ideal linebacker in the system. You don't want him to go be Dylan Rosiak here. And, you look at Malachi Hood, maybe there's still growing he needs to do, or Gentle Hunt's not an every down guy. But for as critical as we've been as this defensive staff, like, you've got to give them credit for finding these pieces and realizing it could be something. And Brett Bielema and Aaron Henry have talked about, like, there's a sense of empowerment for those guys to know that this is your third down package. And Kanena Odeluga said, we kind of looked around and we've talked about all the times we had. And, hey, if we ever get our chance, we're going out there. And it kind of came together with these guys. It's just a really cool story, honestly, the way that it happened. And more importantly, Jeremy, it was effective. Anytime it was 3rd and 5, that kind of feels like the mark was obvious passing situations. They took that turbo package out there. And part of doing that, as Brett Bielema talked about Monday, is if a team converts, and we didn't see that a lot today, obviously, you've got to be able to get those guys off the field quickly. And I think that's part of that wrinkle in there. But I thought that was a super fun element to this defense today.
And the other part, Joey, is their run defense today was able to force a lot of 3rd and longs, right? Like the 3rd and average distance for Michigan State was 7.9, but 3rd and 5 plus, Michigan State today was 1 for 9, right? Like that package worked. Like they got after it, and even 3rd and short, they were 1 for 6. So they did a fantastic job. And I think it's great just to get different guys on the field. They're fresh, Joey. T-Rod talked about that, like Gentle coming in for him, kept him maybe a little bit fresher. And I think it also allowed guys like Gabe Akis and Seth Coleman to get some advantageous matchups. But they use Gabe a lot on some stunts, and it felt like whenever he stunted, he was able to get in the backfield against, again, a weak Michigan State defensive lineman. But that's what you want. You want your stars to step up, and man, Gabe's having a monster year. Like when you look back at it, 8 sacks. He's 1 away from top 10 in Illinois history. He's 2 away from being just, I think, the 6th guy with 10 sacks. So he's putting together one of those years that maybe he is an early entry draft pick, but when he's helping win like this, you'll take it. You'll worry about that later.
Yeah, there's probably people in the building not worrying about that later. They're probably working the phone lines to get some generous donations from Mr. Gabe Akis to get back. Because here's the thing, like he's kind of put himself in this position. I think he's definitely a draftable player.
Yes.
You look at him, but if you're Brett Bielema, your pitch is you're better than just being draftable. We want you to come back and elevate yourself and elevate our defense for a 4th year. Like, that's a really, really big decision coming over this program in the next 6 weeks, if not a little bit shorter than that. Xavier Scott would be in that conversation. That's right. But yeah, he's playing like that. He's playing like the way Brett Bielema sat at Big Ten Media Days today. We're bringing him here because we don't know if there's a next year for him in college football. And Gabe Akis has delivered. It's been pretty consistent, too. I mean, maybe a couple quiet games here or there that I would probably attribute his quieter games to more of a game planning than a performance standpoint.
Probably more of they didn't get to 3rd and long at all, right? Like they didn't get to really pass rush situations, especially against Oregon like that. But I also want to shout out, this is a really important final stretch for Seth Coleman. This is his final chance to really make an impression at the NFL. And today to have 2 sacks, a pass breakup, I think that's really important. He's got those traits, Joey. So the fact that he could end maybe a little bit better here would be really important. He ended this season really well last year with 6 sacks in the final 6 games. So for him, just to put together some film and make sure you get into an NFL camp. He'll be in an NFL camp, but make sure you get a good deal.
Yeah, and on the note of someone said, did Seth even play? He had 2 sacks. Seth Coleman did, in fact, play football today.
And a pass breakup.
Yeah, he had a pretty good game. But that's, again, like I know we've said this a lot, and some people are like, okay, we get it. Consistency has always been the story with him. Like the highs are really, really high. And you see everything that NFL teams want with the length and the athleticism and the strength to blend in there. You just got to see him in these last 2 games. You're right, 3, and you get into that bowl game. Turn it up, ramp it up, put yourself in a position. Sure, he'll get a Senior Bowl ordeal and be able to go through that and have that circuit to continue to show himself. But production speaks, and keep getting out there and doing that.
I also want to shout out, like, linebacker didn't feel like a huge weakness today, right? Like, I thought those guys did a pretty solid job. Aiden Giles got loose on a couple of them, but there are a few plays. James Cruz, I thought, really stuck his head in there and really made some good tackles. Ryan Mead is playing his best ball the last 2 games, so kudos to him. Walk on that, turns into a solid player for Illinois. And I thought Matthew Bailey played really well, Joey, kind of stepping up, basically in the box today. 5 tackles, tackle for loss, a pass breakup. I think you're starting to see him take a leap and just be a little bit more consistent in what he does.
Yeah, it was a matter of reps, and I think you see what he did in 2022. You know what they expected of him. I think he's a good reminder for us, for people who talk about Illinois, for the coach. Like, reps are the most valuable thing. And there hasn't been a game. When was the last? There has been this season, but it's been a little bit. When was the last, Matthew Bailey struggled that game? It's on the
Purdue.
That was the one, wasn't it?
McCray had, he had 2 big busts on that one. But, he battled Tyler Warren, I thought, really, really well. The Oregon game, Sadiq got loose. I can't remember if that was Matt Bailey, but I think he's battled some of these tight ends really, really well. And Michigan State's got a good tight end, and Jack Velling, and he was quiet today. 1 catch for 5 yards. So, yeah, I think Matthew Bailey's kind of a guy that maybe he didn't flash these huge plays, but I just thought he was really good when these running backs aren't getting loose, and Velling was a complete non-factor, and he's supposed to be one of their better players on Michigan State.
Yeah, another guy I want to bring up defensively is Jaheim Clark. Like, he now – watching this cornerback rotation take shape, he's a number 3 cornerback. It would appear to me. I don't know that Terrence Brooks played today, and Jaheim Clark's a guy they've been really high on. I know special teams has been a big deal for him, but you've seen it, at least today, you saw his defensive snaps go up, and he seems to be a guy who's not only number 3, but he's rotating in with the Caleb Patterson, with the Torrey Cox. I know you liked Tim Jeremy as a recruit. And you're starting to see that come to fruition a little bit here early on in his career.
All right, let's shout out special teams. Breezy, Fabrizio Pinton steps up. I didn't see this coming, Joey. I did note today as I was putting together my 5 things I want to see. Like Hugh Robertson had been struggling the last 2 weeks. Like he's had 2. He was really good, I thought, for the first 7 games, and the 2 games after that, like he really struggled. Under 40 yards per punt, and just wasn't as accurate. Fabrizio Pinton comes in, and I got to be honest with you, like we've seen training camp and we've seen some inconsistency with Fabrizio Pinton, who was Big Ten Player of the Week a couple years ago against Iowa, making 3 field goals. What a performance for him as a punter. 4 punts for 189 yards. That's 47 yards per punt. Had 2 of 50 yards, 2 inside the 15-yard line for Michigan State. Hugh did come in and pinned Michigan State inside the 15 as well. But I didn't see that coming. But I want to shout out Breezy because that's a huge performance. A guy, Joey, that entered the transfer portal, came back to Illinois, and he comes up big in a win because 2 years ago, punting was one of the reasons Illinois lost to Michigan State on a windy day. He handled it incredibly well today.
Yeah, absolutely. That was not something I expected coming into Memorial.
Not on Joey Wagner's bingo card, as he likes to
I've been trying to avoid that because someone's like, well, what's not on your bingo board? I'm like, you know what? That's fair. I need a new saying.
Own it, Joey. Own it.
I know I should. I didn't think because you mentioned it. Like we complain. I know people don't like it, but we complain about not seeing a lot of practice. See a ton of special teams. We are pretty in tune with things special teams wise during training camp. You say inconsistent, like it just hasn't been very good in the stretches that we've seen. So I didn't know that he had. It was the old Shaq meme, like Fabrizio Pinton. I was not familiar with your game. I did not know he had because there wasn't a shank in the lot today. The
rotation on the ball was phenomenal. The hang time, like that's one thing Hugh and Blake kind of struggled with is Fabrizio's hang time today was unbelievable.
Yeah, he was really, really good. And credit to the coaching staff for pivoting away from a guy who's been your starter for the better part of 3 seasons and going for a guy that just hasn't done it in the game. Fabrizio Pinton has not done – we haven't seen a punt in the game as far as I can remember. Maybe there's 1 or 2 stragglers over the course of the last – all we've seen him was pretty much chip shot field goals against Iowa. But bold move, really pays off for Illinois. Good for him. Good for him for – like he goes in the portal and everything, okay. The walk-on third string punter. I get that. Really returns with no fanfare. Like there wasn't none of that. He just kind of showed back up. Like,
felt like Aiden Hall, the long snapper coming back, got more fanfare than Breezy.
Yeah, and man, good for him. Because here's the thing, like we even would have thought, like, is Declan Dooley the one immediately behind Hugh Robertson? Fabrizio Pinton was just not really close to the radar in my brain for being the starting punter, and the heck of a good game for him.
Also, Hank Beatty, first team All Big Ten punt returner. That's what's going to be on my ballot. I will share that with you right now. 6 punt returns for 74 yards. This speaks a little bit to Breezy today, too. I mean, 1 punt return for Michigan State today out of the 5 that Illinois had. Hank Beatty returned every punt. He is fearless with those. He caught one despite an interference, Joey, but he's always getting upfield. And he hasn't had like a really big breakaway. What's his longest? Like 30 this year. He's averaging 15 yards basically per punt return, which leads the Big Ten by a couple yards. He's turned into a heck of a player, and you and I have talked about this. I think it's helped him as a receiver gain some confidence. He had a drop today that hurt, but this is supposed to be a sure-handed guy. He really wasn't that this first 2 years.
Well, he was sure-handed until he got hit the first 2 years. Like that's where I thought the issues were ball security.
Yeah, but kudos to Hank Beatty. He's been a game changer at times with these punt returns. The average field position today for Michigan State was their own 23. For Illinois, it was their own 35. That's huge to be able to put in that better field position. So kudos to special teams. I thought it was huge today.
He's been a better punt returner than Isaiah Williams was last year. And that's
for sure.
Even if you take out the fumbles, like you think legitimately, there was a few today that you were like, oh, he might be able to go. I think I picked the wrong slot wide receiver in the preseason because Kenari Wilcher has not done much on kick return, but they've unlocked something. And good for Hank Beatty. I'm with you. I hope we get to talk to him this week. We should probably ask to see if we can get that on the rotation because I have to wonder, and I think that it's impacted the way he's played offensively. There is a literal correlation to when you've seen this punt return come up to what he's been able to do within this offense. And good for him. He was they beat Iowa State for him, but he was a guy you had to get. out of Rochester when Brett Bielema and the staff first took over. It's taken a little bit, but he's really found himself a niche.
You got anything else before we get to these super chats, Joey?
Oh, did we see? We talked about the offense. We have not talked a ton offensively. Pat Bryant, man. We did talk about Pat Bryant.
We did, but I'll talk more about Pat Bryant.
His career arc, I know we probably brought this up on Wednesday, is everything that like you think is gone with the portal. You know what I mean? From blocker to, hey, he's a guy who's going to get out there. He'll have a couple catches as a sophomore, to a serviceable starter as a junior, to now to a guy who's an all Big Ten candidate at wide receiver who can change plays. He's 2 touchdowns away from tying the single season record. You got 3 more games left on the docket for him. So you probably could have gotten him another one today. There was one that Luke Altmaier threw away and Pat Bryant jumped because I think he knew he had his guy deep.
I'll give Luke credit there. That was just pressure.
It's the right play to throw it away. It was the right play to throw it away like he did. But like it's been a little bit since he's been in the end zone. I think teams have started to game plan a little bit with him. But that combo of him and Zachary Franklin is really, really stinking good.
Pat Bryant is 5th in the Big Ten, 717 yards, 8 receiving touchdowns, is tied for 3rd. So, yeah, he's having a hell of a year. We haven't even mentioned Zachary Franklin catch. Good Lord.
Oh,
what a catch.
Like they reviewed that, and I'm like, what? Why? He has 2 feet. That's a Sunday catch.
Yeah, we had our YouTube TV on. I went in my prayer. I was like, no chance. Like, that is definitely a catch. 2 feet in, catches the ball. He's going to play in the NFL. I don't know how long or how big of a role he'll play, but, man, he just gets open, and his hands are so good. It's just such a great combination of receivers. When you got this big play, deep threat like Pat Bryant, who's physical, and Zachary, who just has all the trust from Luke Altmaier. Like when Luke's got to find somebody for a quick out or just a quick catch, it's going to Zachary most of the time. And down the field, it's probably going to Pat Bryant. So just what a combination when you have 2 guys like that.
Yeah, you're probably taking this film in the portal. I would imagine you'll be looking for a wide receiver here in a few weeks to fill in for those guys. Maybe Colin Dixon, Malik Elzy takes the other one. But that's a pretty good pitch to say this is what we can do when we've got 2 go-to wide receivers on
4 guys in the last 2 years that are going to be in the NFL at wide receiver. I mean, this has been one of the worst position groups Illinois has had in the last decade, along with quarterback. And now you have Luke Altmaier and Tommy DeVito. So I get it. There were some play calls in that 3rd quarter that I didn't understand. But Barry Loney has ignited this passing attack to our quarterback and wide receiver are strengths of this program. And Joey, it is fun to watch 21st century football with passes down the field. Like I've heard fans from the 80s talking about, they just threw the ball down the field all the time. And it was so much fun. Like this is a fun offense when it's going to watch when you have players like this. So it's different than we thought we'd see with Brett Bielema, but you got to give Barry Loney a ton of credit for that. Like they're going to have multiple potential quarterbacks in the NFL at some point, and certainly they're going to have 4 receivers in the NFL next year.
Yeah, and I think 2 of those guys, you saw Casey Washington get drafted, Pat Bryant's going to be drafted. I don't have a great enough gauge on Zachary Franklin to know if he's a draft pick or UDFA. But 2 of those guys at least are going to be drafted in the NFL. One other point on the offense I wanted to bring up, Luke Altmaier, I thought when Luke Altmaier after the Minnesota game really kind of stood on the proverbial table and said, we like tempo, that told me a lot about him, where it's like, oh, he's comfortable enough. He's not a fool, right? Like you say something like that in front of a bunch of cameras, someone's going to hear it. And
Pat Bryant did too.
Yeah. And I thought it told me a lot about them to say, hey, we want to do that more. And Barry Loney kind of hemmed and hawed about it on Monday. He didn't say a ton on Monday, which was abnormal for him, but they got to tempo today. And it wasn't Chip Kelly at Oregon, but it was they picked moments to hit it and gas it up a little bit. And I thought they executed on that, especially that 13-play drive. They got into tempo on 3rd down, got into it on 1st down before the false start. Like you saw them pick their spots and they were effective in it.
And Joey, as someone who watches a team that has terrible coordinator-quarterback relationships,
Go on.
This is great to see. Like that your quarterback goes, I'm comfortable doing this. Like this is where we feel good. This is where my star receivers feel good. It's where our offensive line might be put in best positions because Luke said the defensive line gets tired.
Yep.
So that helps them a little bit. Like the fact that Barry listens to those guys and takes he always does this, right? He's talked about this all year. Like I talk with Luke and Pat, feel what they're comfortable with, and we get together. And so kudos to him for doing that. He's not stubborn. He's not like, oh, I'm all powerful here. Like I think that's a really good thing when you have a quarterback and wide receivers like this.
Yeah, and to your point, to echo your point from earlier before we get to the super chats, I get it. Like the stretches where the offense stalls out, there are head scratching moments, whether it's on the offensive line or that quarterback sweep or just things that you don't really understand. But zoom out. Every time you're frustrated, just zoom out a little bit. And it doesn't mean that every coordinator is perfect, but man, the way that this team we've seen stretches of Illinois football where passing the ball was a literal chore.
Joey, again, I have seen broken offenses. This is not a broken offense.
No, and to your point, like to listen to your guys, the guys who go out there and make plays and understand what they're comfortable with. Not every coordinator signing up to be like, yeah, I'll listen to this guy because, it's a belief that they've built with one another. And credit to Barry Lunny. Obviously, that doesn't excuse some of those third quarter possessions, but zoom out a minute, man, and it's an offense that's taken a lot of steps forward pretty quickly.
Yeah. All right, let's get some of these super chats. If you want to send those in, we'll get spend some time here answering your questions. Def, $20 super chat. Thank you, Def. Took 2 years, but I'm so happy McCray stayed here to finally get more play calls with a straight line to the point of attack, often predetermined using more gap blocking schemes that he had under Peterson. Love this kid. I still feel like he could play more because I feel like he's their best running back, but I do think they're using him better. You're seeing pistol Joey, but you just give him a little bit of space. He's going to get some yards. He's going to move forward. Like there are not many runs Josh McCray is getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage. While I do think Lawfrey that happens with. But yeah, it's awesome to see this kid that, listen, I didn't know what his role was going to be if Caden Fagan stayed healthy. I didn't think he looked all that great the first couple games. But, man, you're starting to see the old Josh McCray back, even if it's not 140 yards or whatever, because Illinois can actually throw the ball now. He's been a very valuable piece. Again, 7 touchdowns last 5 games, and he's their best blocker. He's their best pass catcher, and he's their best in between the tackles guy.
Yeah, I looked up at the video board as the game was winding down, and they were salting away some of those possessions. Like he's only had 8 carries, and this is very different, of course, right? Last in the Minnesota game, we were hitting the table saying he should have had more than 7. I'm with you. I think he could have had more than 8 today. He's a cool story. And selfishly, I wish he would kind of pull back the layers a little bit on his story to get to this point. It's not who he is, and can't fault him for that. But those 2 years couldn't have been easy. To never get your footing, to watch Aiden Lawfrey, to watch Caden Fagan, to watch Khalil Valentine, to watch all of these guys come in. And I'm not going to put words and say Josh McCray wondered what his role was going to be because I don't know that. He's not said that, but I know I would have. I know I would have looked around like, how do I fit into this puzzle when that guy, that 4-star guy, plays a lot like me? Like, yeah. Where do I land here? And it's a really, really cool story to see him have these moments.
Yeah, and to have these 3 guys stay healthy after Caden goes down is really important. I think Thad has used them pretty well, and he's using all of them. But who never lost faith in Josh McCray was Brett Bielema.
Ever.
We've talked about it. Brett loves this guy. He just loves it. It was his first recruit here, but he just loves this person and loves the football player, and you're seeing it come out. And I think Brett deserves a lot of credit because I think he's always instilled confidence in Josh and always knew that there was a role for him. So when Caden goes down, man, you knew Josh had to step up, and he certainly has done that.
Yeah, I'll go a step further. I don't know what Josh McCray's future plans are in life, but if he wants to go into coaching, he'll be a GA here. Brett Bielema will keep him around because he's a heck of a good story. He's a guy people really gravitate towards. He obviously knows football. I don't know if he's going to do that, but that's like when you think of relationships with coaches and players, that's the guy you can see in a blue windbreaker like Art Sikowski wears and walking around the practice fields.
Dele Harding as well. Def. Love Odaluga's sack today, especially sweet because he was not only held, but held by his face mask to play right before. I love that we get to talk to Kenan Odaluga now because he's you can tell he's a kid who was committed to an Ivy League school before Illinois got to him. Yeah, he's such a great story, Joey, because he's 5'11", right? Like him and Gentle Hunt both 5'11". So it's hard to play him like full time at linebacker or on the edge or whatever it is. But he's just a good football player. He's jacked up like an action figure. He's quick. And I was wondering why they didn't play him in this role earlier in the season. It sounds like he just wasn't fully back yet to his explosiveness that he was before after breaking, I think it was his ankle, right? Brett said his leg.
I think so. I think it was
But
his ankle.
had a fracture last year regardless, and that takes a long time to come back from. But he's a nice piece. He's a sub-package guy, but he's like a sub-package all-star.
Yeah, it's actually, in fact, almost a year, probably close to the day that he had that ankle injury at Iowa. And it's a good reminder for us when, it's like, oh, so-and-so's back at practice. And when you're talking about, sprained ankle is one thing. Talking about a broken ankle or whatever his injury was, or you're talking about a Matthew Bailey with his shoulder or whatever, like cleared and back are two different things. And I think sometimes you cover sports, it's everyone, right? Or you follow sports and it becomes a lot more black and white, that cleared is also back. And it's a reminder that it doesn't happen overnight and that it takes time. You've got to rebuild trust. You've got to rebuild confidence in yourself to move like you once did. And he's coming into that. And look, good for him for finding that role, and good for the coaching staff to know that, hey, he is a good pass rusher. He has a knack for he's fast. He can get it to the quarterback. You got to pick and choose your spots with sub packages, how they go, but feels like they may have unlocked something, and just the value. And I'm going to try to dig into that this week. Just that third down, that sub package grouping. That's a really, really cool story.
Yeah. Fedigator prediction: Bielema will challenge the coin flip in a future game. What the hell was that challenge in the second quarter? Bring on Georgia in the Citrus Bowl. Yeah, that was a bad challenge. I don't know who was calling down to Bielema for that, or if he saw it up there, but that was certainly a catch. Like he had taken like 3 steps after he caught the ball. It was a fumble out of bounds. That's what it was.
Yeah,
bad challenge.
And just to be clear, like there's just way too much other stuff to cover to dive in to ask Brett Bielema about that challenge. There's a part of me, because like it was really clear that it was a catch. There is part of me that I wonder if that was a back your guy, like whoever was in coverage on that play. I think it may have been Xavier, if I'm not mistaken. If he comes over and says, "Coach, that's no catch,"
still got to have somebody up here in this booth.
Someone should have told him, but I just wonder if that was Brett's way. I don't know. Like this is total speculation of his way of backing his guy and saying,
could have been costly in a close game, right?
Absolutely. Like I'm not saying you're going to do that a lot. I don't know. Like usually there aren't challenges where it's that clear that it wasn't. So I'm just trying to think outside of the box as to what it could have been.
Thank you for the $5 super chat, Fedigator. Scott, $4.99 super chat. Joey, how confident are you that Pat Bryant will get his 10 touchdowns as you predicted?
You got a little scary in the last couple of weeks. Rutgers, Minnesota, or Rutgers Northwestern bowl game. I think Pat Bryant should find the end zone. 2 will tie it. 2 will tie the single season record. I think I went on and saying he'll break it, get 3 more. I think he will at least tie it. I'm feeling very confident in that.
Yeah. The Happy Hermit. Can you imagine if we had Cole Rusk this season?
I brought that up to you after and this isn't trying to jump on Tanner Arkin for that drop on that kind of that short route, but like that feels where Luke Altmaier rolls out. He clearly reads downfield, nothing there. You drop it off to your tight end. That feels like a Cole Rusk play to get that guy the ball in space. And Tanner Arkin's done just fine in that role this season. But at that moment, I kind of envisioned what Cole Rusk would look like right there, and using that speed and that athleticism to get upfield. That would have been a really intriguing piece.
It's why you're relying so much on Pat Bryant's Car Franklin, right? You just don't have those tight ends. Tanner Arkin's kind of like the stat line that I would expect out of him: 15 catches, 108 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like I think before the season, we're like 20 catches for 170 yards.
Yeah.
Like that would be an Arkin stat line.
Yeah, and he's been a fine blocker. Like so, yeah, I wasn't trying to jump, but like that feels like get Cole Rusk in the flat. Or if you're Brett Bielema, you're sending that to J.C. Anderson and Max Sutter and saying, "Look, it could be you at some point." But yeah, very Cole Rusk or very Tanner Arkin stat line. And even today, what do you have today, Jeremy?
3 catches, 17
3
yards.
catches for 17 yards. Very, very, very on brand for what we thought that tight end position. And I'm also like, at least they're not trying to shoehorn it, right? And to say, hey, we had this whole idea for this position with this guy. Okay, let's try to make Carson go to Cole Rusk. Like they've just kind of pivoted elsewhere. And I think a lot of coaches would do that, but I'm glad to see they're not trying to make something happen there.
Yeah, and they did a nice stretch of tight end touchdown catches, so I'll give them that. All right,
yeah, absolutely.
Daff has one more, $9.99 super chat. Thank you, Daff. All right, Illini, just win for my wife, 5-year-old son, and me in the stands at Rutgers next week. You might need to bring some noise canceling headphones, because boy, that sound system at Piscataway at about 11 a.m. in the morning is intense. But they do set an interesting atmosphere there. He said, I won't be presumptuous enough to ask for anything else all year, but he wants a win against Rutgers. I feel good about this team going to the final 2 games, Joey, because you have the quarterback, you have the wide receivers, you have some defensive playmakers up front that I think can get after it. And you have teams that are struggling for the most part. I haven't looked at the Rutgers-Maryland game since it was 10-7, I think, Maryland. But Ethan Kaliak-Manis had a good game against Minnesota, helped them win. Minnesota also had a couple turnovers late in that game that really hurt them. That Rutgers team doesn't scare me. I think it could be a close game because a lot of these Big Ten games can be, and Illinois is not a dominant team. But I do think Illinois is the better team. I think Illinois will be a road favorite in this one, Joey. I think Illinois will be ranked after this week, and potentially 7-3 with the wins they have and the losses they have. I think they're deserving of that. So yeah, I feel some confidence because Rutgers defense has been pretty terrible through Big Ten play.
Yeah, Rutgers can run the ball well. It kind of, without all the first round picks that Michigan has, you could probably dig up the Michigan game plan for a quarterback. Now, Kaliak-McManus.
I'll give Kaliak-Manis this. I think he's better than Jack Dunn.
Yes, 100% agree. But you can really sell out to stop the run, which makes me wonder how much of the turbo package you'll see in that game if you just want a little bit more, more size. Ryan Mead up there. Def, I'm glad you're going. Please take a phone charger. You're like an ATM for these super chats, and we need you here after the game to keep us moving here. But yeah, I feel good about where they were. And we said it the other day, Jeremy, November, and like when we talked about this month in August, it was, can you get to a bowl game? Can you survive what we thought was not a very favorable beginning of the season to put yourself with 3-4 wins to push to a bowl game in the month of November? Now you're trying to push for Orlando. You're trying to push to the Citrus Bowl, and you can do that still in this month. And I know college football playoff is awesome, and it takes some of the lore away from maybe every other bowl game. Don't care. Get your fan base.
It opens up the opportunity for Illinois to have a good bowl game, right?
And in a place in Florida and Orlando, people will travel. There will be families going to Disney, Jeremy, and catching that game. Like, that is a good deal and a good situation for Illinois if they can take care of business to get there.
Yeah, Glenn said, let's go to the Citrus Bowl, Orlando in December. Great weather, Illinois football, priceless. We saw the ReliaQuest people here back. I love the ReliaQuest Bowl. That was a phenomenal bowl.
I don't know if they had – I don't care. The media hotel where we stayed at, they were kind enough to treat us to some snacks.
Hospitality room, man.
Hospitality room, and they had
that old couple was just
pretty friendly pour on your ramen and diets and my – whiskey diets, and boy, we really took that over. For the first couple of days, it was just us. Like, how we doing?
We made the most of that hospitality.
Yeah, bring us some plate here, and thanks for the Yingling and the whiskey diets. I would happily go back. Hat Tricks in Tampa had some great wings. So if it's Orlando, we're gonna have to really open the recommendation well here, because I am not familiar with Orlando.
I told you we're gonna have to go drink around the world at Epcot. Like, I told Joe we're going to Epcot. I don't think he's been there. So the Disney thing, he's thinking for kids. No, Epcot's for us adults, Joe.
All right. So if they get there, whatever podcast we're talking about going to the Citrus Bowl for Illinois, that's where we're going to need the super chats to fund this drinking around the world. We'll have updates from what we learn if you can make that possible for us.
Yeah, just a nice bounce back win for Illinois, and it does set up to where you win one more. I think you got a chance really to go to Orlando, but man, if you get to 9 wins, Joey, 7 seasons of 9+ wins in this program's history. So I think it's a confidence booster, not only for the fan base, but for this team, that this could be a really pretty special season. And if you do get to that 9-win mark, I mean, the momentum you would feel going into bowl season, going into the transfer portal, going into season ticket sales, Joey. I mean, let me look this up, but the attendance this year was the highest it's been, I think, since 2008, or close to that, because
this is right.
It was great. It was great this year. The crowds, I think the students have been unbelievable throughout Brett Bielema's tenure here, even when they were 5 and 7, some of those years. But I thought, the East Balcony was fuller than we've ever seen this season.
100%. Some late arriving, you're going to get that with a 1:30 game. But again, people want to buy in. It's just
Mark, 1999 super chat, Mark.
All right, we're going to Epcot. It's a lot of peopling for me. So what a guy, Mark.
It'd
That's
just be me and
incredible.
you, Joe. It's fine.
I mean, there's a lot of others. Think it's just gonna be me and you at Epcot? A lot of other surrounding humans. It's a lot.
A lot of little humans too.
To take the Xbox. Now we got to get money for the flights. I put the Xbox in their carry-on. It'll be a whole ordeal. Yeah, man, it's people want to buy in. You've seen that come through. And you think about one more point about what this momentum could mean for Illinois going into the offseason. 2026 has got some dudes that Illinois is in on. And Illinois clearly has had those guys on campus. And I'm getting the sense in just how they're bringing them all back. Like they think there's opportunity for 2026 to really be a heck of a recruiting class and finishing this thing up 9-3, going into this with that momentum into summer OV season, which is no joke. Like decisions are made in July. Like that matters. That stuff's a big deal. And I think you want to ride that wave as long as you possibly can.
And I want to shout out Brett Moore, the SID, who just does great with all these stats. First time since. He's so good for us and the Illini fan base with all the work he does. But him and Danny McCray as well. But this is the first time since 1983 that Illinois has beaten Michigan and Michigan State in the same year. Now, it's a down year for Michigan, but still, that's a bowl-bound team. That's still Michigan with all that talent. A bunch of NFL first-round picks going to be on that team. Michigan State rebuilding, but that hasn't stopped Illinois from losing to them before, right? Like 2 years ago, they lose to them. So just a lot of these firsts, Joey. First time they've had 6 home wins since 2001, right? Like Brett Bielema continues to check off a lot of those boxes to where I thought he had a really powerful quote where he said, it's just about changing the expectations. I came here to change the expectations. So he doesn't want to dive into that too much because it's a 1-0 mentality, right? That's what he has to tell his team, and it's working. But they are changing the expectations to where a 7-win season at the end of this would have been kind of disappointing, right? Like after the way you start.
Yeah.
So, like the fact that he's raising the bar, it's great. That's what Illinois wanted, and he's a good hire. Good hire for Josh Whitman.
Yeah, and again, same thing we said with the offense. Frustration means you're in a position where you think you can win games, and like I get it. Like there have been moments, if you're a fan, you're like, what is happening here? I totally. You are not going to get an argument from me, but again, I would always encourage in those moments, zoom out and realize that you're not going to get to check off a lot of these first sense if Brett Bielema gets this thing where he wants to go, and you're looking at this as the expectation of a bowl-bound team every year, the expectation of 7 wins a year, whatever it looks like for Illinois, and getting there, man. And I know you look at Indiana and you think, wait, why'd they do this in year one? That's fair, but Brett Bielema has got this program going in a direction you haven't seen it here in a little bit.
I'm looking at the attendance record, so I'm doing this on the fly, so deal with me. 54,750 was the average this season. And they don't have it by the actual like average. They have it by the full attendance. But it's one of the best that they've had in quite some time. So it'd be the best since 2009 when they had 59,544.
People show up, man.
You need it.
People show up when you win and you're playing like the offense has been for the better part of the year. I know there's been lulls in the offensive line, this and that. It's been an exciting brand of football when you're watching your quarterback throw it around a little bit, and people are buying into that.
All right, that'll do it for us. We thank everybody. We really appreciate the super chats here on the live YouTube channel. If you're here with us, we appreciate you guys. Hit that like button on the way out. If you're not subscribing, subscribe to us. Hit that notifications bell as well. If you're listening on the podcast, appreciate you guys. Follow us, rate us, review us wherever you get your podcasts. Joey and I will have plenty on the written side of things at IlliniInquirer.com. So be on the lookout for all of that. Everybody have a great night. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.